Welcome, I'm Stephan. I'm one of the staff therapists here at Octave. In this series, we're going to be diving into some of the internet's most common questions they have about therapy. Here, we'll unpack some of the most misconceptions people might have about therapy and might make it intimidating for them to come in and start the treatment. In today's series, we'll be discussing one of the internet's most common questions, which is, do I really deserve therapy or not? One user wrote, I don't even feel like my problems are big enough. I feel as though other people have bigger struggles and bigger issues, and my problems don't really even qualify enough to even talk about it in therapy. What's the point of even coming in? I think the biggest one is that I think people see the TV, and for better or for worse, even though it gives like a really clear lens about what therapy looks like, it could also give the impression that like, well, if I'm not talking about this issue that the character is talking about, then maybe my issues don't really qualify. I feel like I've seen one area, but I think there's another one is that if the person says to themselves, this is a problem, but it's not that big of a problem, it allows them to have at least some emotional separation between what they're going through and how maybe they can address it. Because ultimately, if we say that something isn't a big problem, then I don't have to work on it. It's just something that can linger in the background. I feel like in some ways I will jokingly blame all those things that people say there's starving children in Africa. What do you have to complain about? And the reality is that, well, yes, they are starving. There's other people, but also there's your unique experience. Is that there's not a competition about who has the biggest scars and who has the biggest wounds. Because life isn't about a game in that sense. The only thing is that, well, there's pain and discomfort and it's causing some stress in your life. And it's important to understand what's causing that stress? And how are you relating to that stress? Is it causing you to withdraw from your friends and family? Is it maybe causing you to maybe use substances to cope? I think just because something isn't big doesn't mean it's worth addressing. Because things eventually can become sepsis, kind of going to the medical idea. Big things become bigger after if we start to avoid it long enough. There is no one idea about trauma. And the really challenging thing about pain is that it's a really relative experience. One person might have what we might consider the classical idea about what they might think about trauma is that the capital T's, sexual abuse, physical trauma, and verbal trauma. And sometimes that might make feel this person qualifies for coming in therapy. But the reality is that there's a really big spectrum of what is pain and what can cause discomfort in our lives. Some person might feel as though they're having a really challenging experience with their boss. They might have some tension with their parents that they really love, but it's just really hard to maybe get to their feelings and get to the point across. And all these things are problems. They're not capital T problems, but it's more in the sense that if you have something that's been on your mind for weeks and months, and it's in a constant repetition of pain, then it is something to qualify and talk about, maybe getting a second opinion or maybe working through with someone who doesn't have any stake in the game. The only stake is that they want you to be better and they want you to maybe have the capacity to think about the problem differently and to maybe find different ways to approach the situation. Think about it in this way. If you had a friend and they were coming to you and they were saying they were going all these problems and they were struggling, do you think you would tell that friend of well, you don't deserve to, you don't even need, it's not a problem. Why even talk about it? If you feel you wouldn't tell your friend, your family, or your partner this, think about why you're telling yourself this. And once we kind of realize that we, for better or for worse, can be our own worst critic, and we talk about ourselves terribly, if we realize that we wouldn't tell another stranger this, maybe it's worth thinking, maybe I shouldn't tell myself this. I actually love it when people come in and say that they're feeling a little ambivalent, because as clinicians, the more information that you provide us, the more that we can kind of work and understand what you're going through. So even if you might feel if you tell the therapist that you think it's hurting their feelings, this is actually the most valuable piece of information that you can tell us. So if you come in and you tell me oh, I don't even think I deserve therapy, I'm great. Tell me, why do you even have this impression? What gives you this idea? And then we can maybe understand this since, I don't know, maybe family members might have minimized certain things in your life. Maybe you grew up in a household where like unless you have something interesting and novel to talk about, there's nothing worth bringing up. The more things that you can tell me about your life and your experiences, the more things that we can help you. So come in and tell me that you don't want to be in therapy and we can like do the magic. This next question comes from my online message board asking, do I need to have a therapist who shares my similar identity in order to talk about my problems? I think initially I would say yes and no. That I think it's really valuable that if you work with someone who has a similar experience to you, because on one hand, it kind of eases a lot of the like having to give you identity like one-on-one questions. For instance, like, you know, I'm Black and Caribbean, so there's a very unique experience that like happens because of that. But also at the same time, even if like we cover all the baseline, ultimately there's still a unique experience that the person has. And unfortunately, there is no kind of getting away with having to talk about you as a unique individual. Having a shared identity might get me like after like level 1, but there's still like deeper parts of your experience that you still have to talk about. So it can help in the beginning, but it's not going to be the end all be all. One of the most important aspects of an LGBT affirming therapist is one who kind of takes a stance that your sexuality is not like a hindrance. It's an additive part of who you are and how you navigate the world. And understanding that you are part of the LGBT community is also having this implicit understanding of maybe the minority stress that you might go through. So this is understanding that if you are a Black gay man navigating things, this is going to be a very different experience from someone who might be a white and gay man navigating spaces. The fact is there's intersections in the world. And knowing that not everyone kind of navigates the space the same is a really important identifier of having that affirming care. Now, also adding the reality is that like not all clinicians are going to either be a part of the LGBT community or have that lived experience. And that's perfectly fine, because what really helps is that there's so many new avenues of learning about LGBT competency. So that might be taking a certificate, might be having certain continuing educations, or having a supervisor or a colleague who has experience, because the reality is that the LGBT community is a broad spectrum and no one's gonna have infinite knowledge about everything. So it's kind of having the humility of knowing that, oh, I don't know something, let me go to someone who has the expertise so I can like better equip myself with the person and I can help the client. It's all about knowing is if you don't know something, it's perfectly fine. I worked with a, they would describe themselves like non-binary, and they would ask, they asked me like, oh, like, are you, what's your gender presentation? Like, how do you identify? And I told them like, oh, like, I identify as a male, he, him. And I think there's enough kind of at least interest and curiosity that you might have to say like, I might not necessarily understand your full lived experience, but I'm still curious enough to want to understand you, how you navigate the world. So, you can like live a more affirming identity in life. And I think at least by not having the same lived experience, it kind of allowed the person to kind of like talk about certain things about their own worries and anxiety that they worry like, well, if I talk to like another trans person, would they judge me for maybe some critical thoughts I'm having about my early parts of my transition? So at least sometimes, something that's always interesting is that sometimes having people in your same experience and community might make the person worry like, well, are they gonna judge me because there's this perception that everyone in the community should have a similar thought and feeling. So if I deviate from that, that perception, is a person gonna like think lowly of me? So there's also an additive of having someone who's separate from the community to maybe talk about things that maybe they're embarrassed or ashamed or find really challenging about their identity. So something that's really unique and amazing about Octave is that we have what's called the Care Navigation Team. These are a group of people, some therapists, some lay people, whose job is to, one, get an initial assessment about who you are as a person and what you're kind of struggling with. And based on the information that you give them, they are aware of us as therapists, so they can know right away like, okay, you have talked about worries about relationships and these things. I know that John will be like a really great fit. Let me find out what John's availability is and like how can I match you with him. And so the Care Navigation Team is to work effectively to, one, understand you, understand the therapist, and to have as much of a strong therapeutic alliance as possible so you can start your therapeutic journey here at Octave. Thank you, users, so much for your question. I appreciated the thought and the courage to even talk about it. If you or anyone else might have this kind of thought, I really encourage you to visit Octave's website so you can be worked through with a care navigator that can help you match with a therapist who understands your unique experience, and hopefully work with someone who has both experience about what you're going through and just overall you feel like it might be a good fit in starting your therapeutic journey. If you have any more questions, please go to findoctave.com.